Chronopunk, a novel, episode 3. We're publishing this novel, Chronopunk, in episode form, and this is the third episode for new listeners. This is a series, roughly on a weekly basis. We're publishing episodes. You can go back on our feed and see the synopsis and episode 1 and 2. So this is episode 3. The purpose of this orals is to give an overview and to highlight some of the interesting things in the episode. And we encourage people to read the actual episode on the link. It's on Substack. And again, for new listeners, probably the best would be to go back to the synopsis and read episodes 1 and 2 before reading this one. So in this episode 3, we're introducing Lisa's character a little bit more. So what this novel will do systematically is go back and develop characters that end up playing a crucial role in the novel. So Lisa Chu is one of the main players. She runs the intergenerational time travel division of the DoD. She is in charge of Modi actually being sent back in time. So she runs that division, and her character is being depicted here in more detail. We go back to her youth, where she grew up, and I think I want to say a few things about her character, which is more general. She's a woman of strong conviction. I would say she's kind of like a macho female, like obviously incredibly attractive. She's a mix of a Taiwanese person and a Scandinavian person. So there's a line in her description where her features are described as the striking Scandinavian look mixed up with the elegant Taiwanese demeanor, and that yields a very, very attractive woman with a very sharp mind. So that's Lisa Chu. She's a beach volleyball player. She goes to the University of Michigan, ends up doing a master's at Chicago, and that's how she gets recruited then to Professor Mongarthy's time travel physics division at the University of New South Wales. Now, Mongarthy himself is also described a little bit. He's sort of the genius mind, the professor that broke through some of the big fundamental problems for intergenerational time travel. We discussed this in the previous episode. Just to recap, the problem with time travel is, and this is now my take on time travel, which is really a scientific question. So this is now not fiction, and that is simply that you can never go back in your own past and back to your own future. What you can do is go back to another past, another trajectory of your own future, or vice versa, go to another future from your existing past. So these are some of the scientific conundrums that I think we haven't solved as humanity yet. So I'm not going to try to solve this. This is not a scientific novel by any means. It's a fiction novel, and the main purpose of the novel is to point out the problem with quantitative easing. The Ben Bernanke started in 2009, and the reason Moody's being sent back is to undo that. So this is akin to the Terminator story, when the Arnold Schwarzenegger character is sent back to undo something that will harm his society in the future. So this is definitely the same idea, and I'm not discussing in detail the scientific conundrums. I've read quite a bit about this, and in The Fabric of Reality, David Deutsch has actually chapters about time travel. So I'm following his guidance here. And again, you can't go back to your own past. There's also this paradox, of course, that you can't really change your future if you go back in the past, because that future that you're changing cannot be your future that you're in right now. So there's a paradox here, and I think it can be explained with the multiverse trajectory thesis. Now, back to the novel. Lisa, again, is being characterized as a very strong, definitely a strong female that has both the looks and the wit, and she also plays both. She's a player, she has a boyfriend, she's a flashy girl at the University of Michigan, she dates the Wolverines kicker, And there's a scene in the novel that tries to make her more human. She gets dumped by Pat, the kicker, because he wants to, he's getting drafted to the NFL, and he doesn't want her to become his sidekick, whether he actually wants to sort of break up because he doesn't think it's good for her to be a sidekick of an NFL player, or whether he wants to just have a glamorous life and not bring her with him. That remains to be open. I just, as a side note, by the author, I was in a somewhat similar position myself when I left Switzerland to the U.S., and I was dating a very interesting woman, actually, half Chinese, so that's a coincidence. And she was very interesting. She was really, very similar to Lisa, a very witty, attractive person. And I didn't want her to come with me, and I'm not sure why I didn't want that. But I think fundamentally it's not a good idea for a couple that, let's say, starts out let's say you're studying at the University of Michigan, and you meet the person there, and that's your life, and then one of you has an opportunity to go somewhere and do something completely different. It is probably a good recipe for disaster for a relationship. So that is just as a side note. So Pat breaks up with her, and she shows a very human. Trait there. She gets drunk. She talks to her friend Jenny, I think. It's not important. She gets drunk and talks about the reasons why she's so upset. And the main reason is that she cannot handle when men make decisions that don't have her as sort of the North Star, right? That's the key problem that she sees, and that shows her sort of macho attitude. The most important scene in this episode, though, is not her actual character. It is her first meeting with Professor Mongarthy, which is, it's very dear to my heart, this scene, because she walks into his office. So she gets a call from Mongarthy. She's in a self-drive going from Hyde Park back to her place in Lincoln Park, where she lives in Chicago. She's doing her master's. She just finished her master's, and so on and so forth. And then she gets the call, and Mongarthy is the rock star in the time travel community. So there's this excitement, and he invites her to Sydney. And she walks into his office, and she sees a quote by Richard Feynman. The quote is, "Paul Dirac had the courage to simply guess at the form of the equation and try to interpret it afterwards." This is a quote that actually Feynman used in one of his lectures, and it inspired me because it's really at the essence of what I think science is. And then there's in the book, in the scene, Lisa says, "Oh, this is my favorite quote. This is how I feel about science." And then Mongarthy said, "Wrong. This is science." I think this is the most important part of this episode, because it really points out the importance of creativity, of risk, and inspiration in the context of science. Science is not about skill. Science, and this is my personal belief, is very similar to the arts, very similar to the hedge fund business, where skills are or any kind of thing, sports. Yes, you need to have the skills. Yes, you need to have a lot of fundamental abilities. But what really is going to make a difference is your courage to take a risk, whether it's with an equation, whether it's with a painting, whether it's with an investment, and go against the grain. And this I think is really fundamental, particularly if you put yourself in the context of this novel. This is happening in sort of 2058 or something like that. So this is, about 30 years from now. So even now, even today, I think it's fair to say that we are, if you had to go long, short, I would say I would go long creativity and short skills, just because skills are going to be more and more taken over by AI, because that's what AI is really good at things that can be replicated really well, that can be evaluated really well, and those are typically skills, whether that is the ability to solve a math equation, whether that is the ability to do something in the real world, climb a tree or run a 100-meter dash. I think those types of things will sooner rather sooner than later be taken over by robots or AI, versus the creativity, the inspiration, the risk-taking, the stuff which is outside of the Gaussian, which by definition is not what AI is really going to be good at, because everything AI does is some sort of Gaussian approximation. That is going to count. So I want to put this in context. It's a small tidbit in the novel. This is not the key message of the novel. This is not a novel about the future of science or the future of humanity as far as AI is concerned. It's not that kind of novel. This is really a novel. It's an economic criticism of the Federal Reserve. That's what this novel is. But there's a lot of things in there. There's hopefully some interesting characters. And there's also this comment about science, which is very near and dear to my heart. So to summarize, this episode 3 really hinges on two big themes. One is the character of Lisa Chu, which is being depicted a little bit more, and you learn about her parents and where she grew up. And the other is her attitude and Professor Mongarthy's attitude towards science. And Mongarthy, in my opinion, is sort of a disciple of Schrödinger and Feynman. He's a renegade genius. He goes to Australia because Stanford is, not really happy with his attitude towards science. He has this edgy, like my way or the highway type approach. He is a big fan of Feynman, and he ends up going to Australia, which has this more new world, less authoritative, risk-taking attitude that he prefers. Thank you.